God, 250 people. Kidding me. Oh, can they
Just a reminder to speakers to mute yourselves. I can hear some of you talking. All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the second week of the Sea Grant Marine Debris Symposium. We're so excited to have all of you here, and I just wanted to give a couple reminders before we get started. Speakers, please keep your video and microphone off until it is your turn to present so that we can all focus on the presentations. Buzz, if you could, thank you. As a reminder, these talks will be recorded and shared publicly, and talks are 10 minutes with 5 minutes for questions. You can ask questions using the chat feature. Could everyone please mute themselves? All right, thank you. Okay. So these are the two different ways that the chat feature will show itself to people. So depending on if you have the browser, the downloaded version, you can ask questions using this little question mark or in the question box. And we love to have questions for our speakers, so please feel free to ask them. And I'm going to turn it over to our first presentation, which is reducing derelict fishing gear in the Gulf of Maine, educating and empowering boaters to be part of the solution. Take it away, Carrie.
Thank you, Madison. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, although I can't see you. I'm Carrie Kazor. I'm with Maine Sea Grant. I am the Education and Workforce Development Lead for the organization, and I am PI on the Community Coalition Marine Debris Grant, along with Stacy Kiefer from Maine Marine Trades Association. Like everything we do this in collaboration, and so you're going to hear a lot about our partners and some of the work that was already underway when this funding opportunity became available. But I do want to share some gratitude for the opportunity. Marine debris is a relatively new program area for Maine Sea Grant, and it's just great to be a part of it. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you about our project today and then learning from all of you as well. Next slide, please. Of course, I'm part of a larger team, and I'm based in the Mid-Coast region in Penobscot Bay, but we have team members all the way from Eastport to the border of Canada, all the way down to the deep, deep south, as we call it. That's Kristen Grant and Wells. And you're going to hear from Dana, who is a PI on another Community Coalition project later today. So stay tuned for that. I'm really proud of our team. We're very much integrated, not very siloed, and we do all kinds of wonderful things together. So more on that if you're interested at a later date. Next slide, please. Great, and for those of you, I'm assuming you're all very familiar with Sea Grant, but for those of you that aren't, even though I'm the education lead for the organization, it's part of our three-legged stool, so to speak. So research, extension, education. And our kind of tagline is marine science for Maine people. We take the research, the data, the resources from the University of Maine and other institutions, and we apply them to Maine communities. You know, when we look at different products and papers, etc., we always ask the question, well, so what? How can this apply to everyday lives? How can this make people's lives better? help people help themselves, so to speak. And I won't read our strategic focus areas, but they're on the slide as well. Next slide, please. So I mentioned we have some partners in this. So Maine Marine Trades Association, Maine Lobstermen's Association, Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, Maine Coastal Program, and Maine Island Trail Association. And many of these partners were already gelled before this opportunity came along, because they created what has been primarily a social media campaign called Love Maine Waters. Now, please keep that in the back of your brain, because I'll circle back at the end. This is our core coalition, and of course, we have many other partners as you sort of radiate out from this core group. Next slide, please. I call this one Trouble in Paradise. You know, Maine, give or take a couple of miles, we have about 5,000 miles of coastline, and we have just about the same amount of islands off the mainland. And so a lot of area and not a whole lot of people in capacity, if you think about it statewide. You know, we only have about 1 million people here in Maine. And of course, once marine debris is in the water, it's on the shoreline, it's really hard to remove. And there's all, you know, types of sources of marine debris. I'm assuming you're well versed in some of the major sources. But in Maine, we have this very large cruising community. Now, that's pretty much in our summer months, you know, May to the end of July, early August. Well, no, I would say end of August. And so they do contribute to derelict fishing gear. You know, if you have fixed gear in the water, for example, like a lobster pot, and you're going to see a visual of that later along in my presentation, you have a toggle system, you have the buoy, you have a toggle system and another sort of smaller buoy, the long line, and then the trap on the sea floor. And a lot of people run over them, and it can be a major safety hazard if their propeller gets, you know, wound around that rope. And then it's also anticipated to be about a $16 million loss annually to our lobster fishery. So it's not only causing harm to the fishermen, but also, of course, the environment. And of course, you know, these things are hard to collect and remove and dispose of once they're there. Next slide, please. So I mentioned this already. We have more than 4,000 miles of coastline. That was a typo, sorry. And, you know, we have very important wildlife that inhabit these shorelines. You know, our darling little puffins, there's an example. So it's a risk to shorebirds and others. And, you know, plastic, it's trouble, right? It turns into microplastic. It's sort of the gift that keeps on giving, if you want to think of it that way. And I don't mean to make a joke, it's a pretty serious issue. But in some of these island communities where there's only maybe 50 people that live there year round, it's, you know, $15, $20 to purchase a bag to put trash into, and they simply do not have the infrastructure, the capacity. So it's a fairness issue, right? We have a lot of underserved populations that live in these areas, marginalized populations, and out of fairness, it's just really hard for them to address these issues. Next slide, please. I've already mentioned this. Sorry, I can't see in my slide series. And, you know, the sparse population, lack of capacity is a big issue. So the primary goal of this initiative is what good old Ben Franklin said, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Next slide, please. So we are doing this education campaign, and this is a very drafty draft of what will essentially be metal signs that will live at most public access points to fresh and salt water waters in Maine. It's been tricky to craft the message. We're taking our time because we don't want to point fingers and villainize people. That really doesn't help get us anywhere. And so the idea is that we all love Maine waters. You can do your part. We all have a part to play on this. And so we're trying to say enough on these signs, and then there will also be a poster and other educational products that will be adapted from this basic design that you see here. You can only do so much. You can't cram too much on these education products that people will interact with directly. So we're going to have a QR code that they will be able to use their phone or any device and go to a complimentary website hosted under Love Maine Waters that will give them rich details on the impacts of marine debris, not only to people and wildlife, to the environment, other things that they can do to help with the issue, because we all know it's a massive issue and this is just taking a tiny bite out of it. But we wanted to start somewhere and really think about, you know what, we are all one sort of big Maine family. We're a community. Let's rally around this issue and again, do our part. A huge part of this is reshaping the social narrative of who's at fault. You know, I just think that's maybe too commonplace these days, is pointing fingers. We know the fishing industry contributes. We know the transient or seasonal cruisers, boating community, whether they live here or not or have a summer home, contribute. You know, it's coming. We're all one huge watershed in Maine. We have so much fresh water and inputs to the Gulf of Maine that, again, it's really important to send that clear message. And next slide, please. This is just a little teaser of what Love Maine Waters website looks like. Please go there because there's a lot of information already. And over this winter, we're going to be adding content to that. For example, videos from fishermen about the impacts and others that are interacting with this marine debris. Also, we want to do a launch in the spring in time for the boating season. So we really want to make a big splash, so to speak, get the word out, because, you know, signage can be tricky. Not everyone's going to want to put up a sign at their marina or their public boat launch. And so we really want to get this coalition off the ground, radiate out, bring in more people, and really kind of be all together in this. And basically, that's the end of what I have to share today. I may have a little more time for questions. I think I have one more slide. There you go. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. If anyone has a question for Carrie, please feel free to ask it. In the meantime, I'll ask the question. What is something that you're looking forward to in the near future in this project?
In the near future, I would say socializing these communication products and really making sure we get the message right? It's hard to know what's going to resonate with people. So we have a lot of testing plans out there. We can't be everything to everyone, but I'm pretty excited about sharing that beautiful product. You know, it's still in the works, but it feels good to be at this place.
Awesome. Thanks. And a question has come in. How will you ensure long-term maintenance of the signs so that they don't become marine debris?
Ooh, that is a great question. And I don't know. I'm going to bring it to the team. We have ordered, or we plan on manufacturing and ordering enough signs that we can certainly replace them. But off the top of my head, that's going to be that relationship with whatever entity is responsible and making sure that we're checking in to make sure that the integrity is there and that they don't blow away in the wind, so to speak.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. That was great. All right.
Thank you, Madison.
Thanks. Okay. We can move right along to beach and on-water trash trapping tech team for Lake Erie. Mary Kay, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
organizer. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks.
We're good?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Maddie. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity today. My name is Mary Kay Bitterman, and you also see on the screen our newest colleague, Abby Komar, who is just joined the project. And I'm standing in for the great Jill Bartolotta, who is unable to be here with us today, but I'm going to do my best, and this is Jill's presentation. So here we go. This is the Beach and On-Water Trash Trapping Tech Team for Lake Erie. It's a bit of a mouthful, but we like the creative acronym of BOTTLE for this project. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a little background about how we kind of came together. Jill and I, through Jill's with the Ohio Sea grant and at the Ohio State University, and I am with the Youth Technology Academy at Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland. And so we are both Physics, Science, and Math Week partners with Cedar Point Amusement Park in Sandusky. Some of you may have heard of that park. And we happen to have our tents next to each other. So my students went over to talk with Jill and vice versa. She came over to visit our tent. And this project partnership was born. The Youth Technology Academy provides STEM engineering access for mostly underrepresented inner city students, but we do span Cuyahoga County. And so there was this natural curiosity between what the Ohio Sea Grant was representing and the students who were at Cedar Point for a robotics competition. That's what we do when we go to Cedar Point. So this project was born, and we have 3 locations that we are focusing on. Obviously, we're focusing on Lake Erie cleanup. The 3 areas that we target for development are Hinckley Reservation, Fairport Harbor, and North Coast Harbor. And these locations were selected because all of them are close to major cities. And so all of them have the dirtiest beaches and the worst swimming conditions. So we felt like we could have the biggest impact at these locations. Next slide, please. So we're very fortunate to have the funding of Meyer, Inc. and the Council of the Great Lakes region to have support from these 2 great entities. This is a 3-year project. And so we're operating on a timeline of 2023 to 2025. We were a little bit delayed in our start just for bureaucratic and other reasons. So we've been hitting the ground running from the beginning, but now we're really kind of cooking with fire, as they say. So through Meyer and the GCLR, we have this really important equipment that we feature in this project, which I'll tell you more about, but they are called the Bee-Bot and the Pixie drone. And that's really, the project is based around the efficacy and utilization of those 2 pieces of technology equipment. It is, as I said, a 3-year project. There are stipends in this project for teachers and students at the Youth Technology Academy. There are travel opportunities for the students, obviously going to the beach sites that we're talking about, but beyond that to participate in outreach events as well, just to carry the message far and wide and have a greater impact. And then there's support to hire the full-time project specialist, who is Abby. We had our kickoff event in April. In May, we had a media event. And then in September, we brought Abby on board. So we're thrilled that she's now with us, focusing on the project. Next slide, please. So again, the project leads are the Ohio Sea Grant at the Ohio State University. Jill is the primary PI on this project, and then the Youth Technology Academy at Cuyahoga Community College. That's my organization, and of course the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is a partner as well. And the picture you see on the right is the first time we were introduced to the Bee-Bot. So that's the beach cleaning robot that you see right there. It was pretty cold that day. We went to the Port of Cleveland, and the various partners all got our first look at it, and we were able to, kind of play around with it, learn how it operates, and that was sort of our first training session. Next slide, please. So speaking of partners, these are the partner projects I mentioned already, Tri-C and the Ohio Sea Grant. In addition, we have the Cleveland Metro Parks, Lake Metro Parks, Irresponsible, the Argonauts, the Port of Cleveland, Ohio Clean Marinas, and Partners for Clean Streams. So we've got a great partnership and a lot of good input for this project. We're excited about that. Next slide, please. So these are the two pieces of equipment. On the left-hand side, you see the Pixie drone, and it is remotely operated removal device for floating marine debris in calm areas. What we learned when we took this out for the first time is that it is effective at collecting the trash that's in the lake. It is very slow. I will say my students who are used to flying drones thought the speed could be a little faster, but we explained to them it's important to go slow and make sure we're collecting the trash. And so it's really an effective machine. This was at Hinckley Beach. And then you see the picture to the right, again, that's the Bebot beach cleanup robot. It's a bigger machine, and we learned a lot actually on this tryout on a beach. Next picture, please. So to the left, that's Jill, and you see other partners utilizing the technology. We learned that conditions are important for using this technology. If the sand is wet and heavy, the Bebot cannot be operated at an optimum level. So that's important to know for the operation of the equipment and for training when we bring this out to our partners to utilize it. Next slide, please. I had mentioned the media event that we had in May. So we brought interested people out to the beach. They were able to see the equipment and see how it operates. We shared with them the importance of this project. So Great Lakes makes up 84% of North America's freshwater surface, provides for over 107 million residents fresh water and the habitats of thousands of species. And then we shared that there are 22 million pounds of plastic each year polluting our lakes. 22 million pounds. It's pretty extraordinary. So this is the message that we need to share far and wide in terms of the importance of this work and work like this. It will cost hundreds of millions of dollars to remediate our lakes every year annually and to protect them. So this is part of the message we share with the media, and the message we'll continue to share with this ongoing project. Next slide, please. So waste characterization, you can see some of what has been collected by the Bebot on the beach. We will talk about this further. We're characterizing the waste that we collect and sharing data kind of far and wide. The pieces that we collect are not necessarily heavy. They're small pieces, but the volume of them is huge. And so it's really important that we're collecting them and removing them from our beaches. Next slide, please. Again, this is more of the waste that has been collected when the Bebot skims the sand. It collects it in the back end and then can be collected and removed. And the analyzation will take place as well. Next slide. So the data collection is going to be really important with this project. You can see an example of the form. This was in May and it was at Hinckley Beach. We collected things like a toy, balloon pieces, fragments, mesh, and so forth. So every partner will have this data collection form. So when the equipment is utilized, these forms will be completed, and then it will all be compiled into a report. Next slide, please. So on the left, you see the tech team. 3 of the students are part of the Argonauts from Davis Aerospace High School in downtown Cleveland. And then Avi with the purple scarf on, Avi Serrano, she is the Youth Technology Academy student trainer who's been hired through this, or will be hired through this project. And so they were that day being introduced to the Pixie drone and learning from each other and learning from and Jill and others. And then they will be the ones who will be training people in the future. And on the left, you see Avi there along with another student from the Youth Technology Academy. Next slide, please. So a really cool piece of this project, we think, is putting this technology into the hands of Cleveland students. Cleveland has ranked 3rd in poverty among cities of its size. And while the Cleveland Metropolitan School District has made great strides and improvements, it's still a difficult school district for the students that are within it. Their results are sometimes failing in areas where we would like to see them succeed. And so the Youth Technology Academy at Tri-C has as its foundation, it's a STEM career exploration program for underrepresented kids, urban kids in various schools. And so we have as our foundation providing equity and access to technology for these students so that they can also be exposed to technology pathways that they can have equipment and technology in their hands that we know that their peers from, you know, suburban school districts have as well. So we're trying to make it a level playing field for everyone. That's the goal of what YTA does. They take college credit engineering courses, and then they use things like drones and robots. They build robots. They do CAD work and single board computing work. So that's what our history has been. This is a great new inclusion. It's a new pathway for them to learn about both environmental issues and then trash trapping technology. And so it fits right in with the Youth Technology Academy, and it fits right in with what our students are interested in and being exposed to as a possible career pursuit for them, certainly an academic pursuit. Next slide, please. So project deliverables, we have a lot. We obviously want to focus on the marine debris training for our students and then our partners at large. We have equipment training. We've already begun that, and we'll continue doing that. We have the development of manuals and videos to assist with this training and the use of this technology. Student design trash technology curriculum that we can use in the future to continue to educate more students each year. We will travel to conferences, peer-to-peer mentoring, peer-reviewed journal articles planned in the future, and then workforce development skills in a new market for our students. Next slide, please. So I mentioned Avi to you. Avi is a really interesting story. When she started with the Youth Technology Academy in her freshman year, she had no idea or no thought of pursuing technology in high school or in college. She joined our robotics team and began to build and program robots with folks from NASA and Rockwell, and she also worked with her peer students from a variety of schools in Cleveland, and she really thrived. She realized she enjoyed a technology pursuit. She became the captain of the robotics team. She learned to develop her public speaking skills. So it was a great experience for Avi, who graduated from high school in May. She knew she wanted to pursue mechanical engineering, but she shared with Jill and I that this marine debris project is near and dear to her heart. She's been involved since the get-go. And as I said, we're hiring Avi as the student trainer. And so it played a role in her deciding to pursue her mechanical engineering degree in Cleveland at Cleveland State University. So we were thrilled after the months of training we put in with Avi that she's still with us. And she's just down the street at Cleveland State, and she's excited to participate and see this project through as well, and then bring the training to other students who are just a few years behind her in high school. Next slide, please. That's the end of our presentation. You can see Jill and Abby's contact information there, and I'll put mine in the chat. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Great, thank you so much. One question is, do you redistribute the rocks / dried seagrass / natural materials along the beach that is bycatch?
I don't know that answer 100%, but I'm thinking that we do. I mean, I can remember the training that I participated in Hinckley Beach. We separated out the rocks and the natural pieces from the materials, and we didn't take that with us. So that would be a better question for Jill, but I think that we do, and we'll double check that with her.
Thanks. We have another question. How does the beach robot work? Does it collect things based on size, or are you also able to collect microplastics mixed in with sand?
So it has the motors in the front, and it's got tank wheels, and then it's got a capture basin or bin behind it, and it skims the sand. And so I can't tell you how small the pieces are that it captures. They're fairly small. I don't know if it would capture microplastics, but it skims the sand. That's why the condition of the sand is really important too. And as it skims, it captures it in that large basin. If something's really heavy, I think that it may have a problem with it, but bottles and things like that, certainly it can collect those.
Awesome.
I'll add
go ahead.
that we have kind of found that it's a good supplement to manual beach cleanup. So if you have a group of volunteers go out picking up things by hand, the Bee-Bot is a good way to follow their path and pick up those smaller pieces that you might not see. That's our best application of it that we found.
Great, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Okay, we can right along to Plastic-Free Cleveland, an expansion of coalition-based efforts to reduce marine debris throughout the Great Lakes. Leah, if you want to, perfect. Okay, I just want to flag that both speakers are labeled as Deidre, but what is Deidre and what is Leah? And I will let them introduce themselves. That was a technological mix-up, so go right ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, thanks for coming to our presentation. Sorry, I was just trying to quickly move everything on my screen. So yeah, we're going to be talking to you today about our project, which is about how we're using these funds to expand coalition work around reducing plastics in Milwaukee, and then also expanding it to another big city on the Great Lakes, Cleveland, which you just heard a little bit about, to the Plastic Free Cleveland program. So next slide, please. So Leah and I will be presenting. Jill is also part of this project, who you just heard about, who is not able to be with us today, but we're all really involved in the co-PIs of the project. I am a social scientist here at Wisconsin Sea Grant. I'm based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Leah is also in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. I'm the program manager for Milwaukee Riverkeeper and one of the lead organizers for Plastic Free MKE.
Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. So you just saw this too. This is such a great like headway into our project with the other one. But I decided to put this map up here for those who are not familiar with the Great Lakes or the Great Lakes Basin. Kind of going back to elementary school, I'll give you a few kind of fun facts about the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are the largest freshwater system in the world, spanning a total surface area of about 95,000 square miles. More than 20% of all of the world's fresh water is in the Great Lakes. Great Lakes region supplies drinking water to about 30 million people here in the US and in Canada. And, you know, we also have a big issue with plastic, which is why we are, you know, doing all this great efforts around reducing plastics and marine debris. Plastic was about 90% of the litter found in the Great Lakes beaches. And as you all know, it contributes to all sorts of issues related to ecological and human health and impacts on climate change. And another fact that I just learned in the last presentation is that 22 million pounds of plastic are polluting our lakes. So that's a huge, huge issue. A lot of these watersheds, you know, there's lots of smaller rivers and stuff that feed into the lakes, and that contributes a lot to the plastic pollution problem in the Great Lakes as well. Next slide, please. But our work around plastics and marine debris really started in Milwaukee because Leah and I are both based in Milwaukee and have special ties to Lake Michigan. So just a little bit about Milwaukee. So we're right on Lake Michigan, kind of zooming in a little bit closer. This is a map that I use to talk about Milwaukee because there's a big environmental justice tie when thinking about some of the issues in Milwaukee and how it relates to environmental problems and plastic. So despite Milwaukee has lots of great assets like thriving parks, you know, we have lots of physical access to the waterfront, and it's just a beautiful city. There's lots to do. It's in the confluence of 3 rivers that flow into Lake Michigan. It's also considered a hyper segregated city. So we really think of environmental justice as how that relates to the plastic pollution problem as well. So as we develop all of these programming and outreach things, we're really thinking about like, why are people really using plastics, and how are the use of plastics influencing different populations of people in the city. And so some of the questions we're looking at are, you know, what are some of the political barriers around using plastics that we're having trouble kind of getting through, like if there's a preemptive ban on plastics that prohibit municipalities from banning plastic bags, which is the case in Ohio and in Wisconsin. And then is there a general lack of knowledge and education around plastics? And then we asked some of the specific justice related problems, such as like, why are people purchasing so much bottled water, right? Is it because they don't trust their drinking water source that comes out of their tap? Because we have some issues with like lead or other contaminants getting in the water in Milwaukee and in other Great Lakes cities. We also have some issues with like food insecurity and grocery store deserts that lead to the purchase of more disposable food products. And then we also consider like, are the alternatives to plastics really expensive? Isn't an equitable consideration? And then when we're doing our education work, we look at like how many communities and schools have less access to education and plastics, around plastics and environmental education in general. So these are all kind of things that are at the base of what we do. And we thought that Cleveland would be a really great city because it has a lot of the same kind of issues, but a lot of the same great assets in the Great Lakes too. It's also on Lake Erie. We're on Lake Michigan and Cleveland's on Lake Erie. So, but they're both like big metro areas. Next slide, please. So then just to give you a quick background of like kind of how our work started together, how Leah and I got together is we started with the first grant that I believe we got from the National Sea Grant Program on marine debris that we received like right in the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And it was designed to do some education work around plastics and facilitate student-led civic engagement projects in some of the local schools here in Milwaukee, and really give youth the reins and kind of figuring out how they could be impactful in reducing plastics in their own households, in their own classrooms, in their own school district, whatever that meant to them. We obviously had a little setback with the pandemic and we weren't able to get into schools as much, but we did a lot of background work and really strengthened our relationships and connected our programming a lot more through the Milwaukee Public Schools and through the Center for Great Lakes Literacy, and just kind of focused a lot more on this education materials and like kind of how to get that out there in an equitable way, and make sure that we're following state standards for environmental education, things like that. Next slide. So Leah's going to talk a little bit about plastic-free MKE, which kind of serves as the model that we're setting up to also be used in Cleveland for Plastic-Free Cleveland.
Awesome. Thanks, Deidre. You can go to the next slide, please. So just really quickly, as Deidre mentioned, environmental justice is really embedded in everything that we do. We're thinking about human health, environmental health, climate change, and all of it, how it impacts the people of our community. And really thinking about how unnecessary single-use plastics, how we can reduce those on a systemic level. Next slide, please. So we started in 2018. We're not a nonprofit organization. We really wanted to stay a movement. A lot of the organizations that are involved were already working on plastics, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel or start something new. We wanted to build collaboration and support the things that were already happening. So we are a movement comprised of community volunteers, nonprofit organizations, government agencies, businesses. A lot of different groups are involved. So we're getting perspectives from a lot of different sectors of Milwaukee. And all of our programs are volunteer supported. So we kind of started in 2018 with a really grassroots effort. And then we wanted to make a movement that was going to be sustainable, that wouldn't rely on any one or two people and their capacity, which is kind of where we started with our volunteers. So that's where Milwaukee Riverkeeper and other coalition partners came in and tried to build a more sustainable framework for the movement. And like Deidre mentioned, we do want to be a model for other communities. So we're talking with not only Cleveland, but other communities around Wisconsin on how, we already have these resources. We have the website and the framework and all of these things. Like, how can we take our lessons learned and support and build on what you all are already doing? So that's kind of been our goal, is to help support other communities in building their own plastic-free movements. So we currently have about 40 coalition partners. We've got about 50 regular volunteers and 30 lake-friendly businesses, which I will talk more about in a second. Next slide, please. So these are some folks who have taken our pledge to reduce plastic in one way, shape, or form. We have a pledge on our website. It's got different options if you're a business, or if you're thinking more about your home or just your individual life. And it has suggestions on ways that you as an individual can reduce plastics in your life. Our focus is always on progress, not perfection. We need a whole bunch of people, thinking about this in whatever way makes sense for them. We don't need anybody doing this perfectly. So that's kind of our mentality around individual action. And we support a lot of folks in taking those individual actions, but we do recognize as Deidre mentioned, that not everyone has the time or the money or the resources available to take these actions in their own life. So our movement is really focused on, you know, the systemic community level changes that we can make that will benefit everybody. Next slide, please. And so here's a photo of Milwaukee Riverkeepers education coordinator doing a plastics audit with some high school students. So this is one of the pieces that we created with that last round of funding that Deidre mentioned. We have Plastic Free MKE has an education toolkit that's freely available on our website. And that's more of a like, I want to do an activity on my own, but I don't know where to start. And so there's a whole bunch of activities on different topics and age levels and activity levels and things that are freely available for anyone to access. So we really want to work with students, you know, kids, youth, they've been impacted by plastics their entire lives. They will continue to be impacted by plastics. They're the, you know, the voices of the future. We really want to engage them at a young age in these issues. Next slide. Thank you. And then these are some of the other larger initiatives that we're working on. So we use our plastic bag monster, which is pictured there, to start conversations with folks on plastics. You know, we do have our ban on plastic bans in Wisconsin, but the city of Milwaukee has banned straws because that was a loophole we found. Our Milwaukee County has banned different types of plastics through their vendor contracts because that also didn't trigger the ban on bans. So we're trying to put together these things that anyone can do even if you have a ban in your state. We're also working to bring a citywide reusable container program to Milwaukee that will reduce, you know, potentially millions of single-use plastic cups and takeout containers from being used every year in our city. And then we have our lake-friendly suite of programs. So I kind of mentioned this earlier, but we support businesses, neighborhoods, conferences, events, all of those things to reduce their plastic footprint, and we give them support and encouragement, and then also we promote them for the hard work that they're doing. So we do have about 30 businesses in Milwaukee that have committed to really reducing their plastic waste. We have one neighborhood and one conference, one annual conference that also has cut down so much plastic by being a lake-friendly conference. And then we're also building these communities of reuse through our stuff swaps and our clothing swap events. So educating folks on, like, let's not throw away this like perfectly good plastic alarm clock. Let's see if someone else has a use for it. Or, you know, like using the opportunity to like rehome our clothing that's still perfectly good, but also made of plastic. We really don't want to be throwing that away. We want to make sure it gets as long of a life as possible. So these are community-driven events that are really building a really nice collaborative environment. Next slide, please. And then, so that's just a really brief overview of some of our strategies and the things that we're working on to really build systemic change in Milwaukee. We have a lot of working groups thinking about these different areas too: policy, education, the lake-friendly programs, you know, really trying to build these systems, build these ways for all of us to reduce plastics so that we can really all be healthier. That's really kind of our guiding focus there, is creating a healthier Milwaukee. So thank you.
Just for the last minute or so, yeah, so this was our project objectives, which we already kind of went over, so I'll just go to the next slide. But yeah, this is the list of our partners so far. And so like one of our main goals in working with Cleveland was that they had a lot of really great initiatives happening already. They had lots of great outreach programs and like people that really cared about this issue, but they just needed a little bit more organization. So we're like reading the, you know, RFP for this grant, we were like, this would be perfect. This would be a great way to kind of expand plastic free MKE to another like really big Great Lakes city with some similar issues and give a chance to learn from each other and organize together. Next slide. So this is kind of what we're thinking about for plastic free MKE. And Abby, who was on the last presentation, is working on a lot of these with Jill as well. We're going to develop a website, kind of like the one that we have at Plastic Free MKE. I may have messed that up. For Plastic Free Cleveland, we're going to develop another website, work on some more outreach and publication materials. We're talking about doing like an annual event related to fashion, perhaps, getting more publicity and education around plastics reduction. And then like building on the sustainable restaurant program, and then some of the other initiatives like Support Circular Cleveland that's happening down there. Next slide. And then I'll just say we had our first like kind of kickoff event last month. Leah and I were at the Healing Our Waters conference, Great Lakes Conference in Cleveland. So we did kind of a kickoff event with a lot of the different organizations that we just saw listed, and we got a lot. And there we met for ice cream and kind of met a lot of the different people, did like a meet and greet, and then we also presented at the Healing Our Waters conference about our plastics program, and got a lot of feedback from the audience about like what messaging works for them and what initiatives have been successful, what some of the barriers are that they've come across, and like kind of starting to work out through all of those. So I think we're at time, so I think that's it. If you want to go to the next slide really quick. So thanks. If we have time for any questions, I'm happy to do that. But
Great, thank you so much, Leah and Deidre. We are at time, so we have to move it right along, but that was great, thank you. And we can move on to Pacific Islands Marine Debris Community Action Coalition with Eileen. Take it away, Eileen.
Thanks, Maddie. Yeah, so I'm here representing our team. The people listed on here are really the project development team. That's Lenz, Mary Donahue, Darren Lerner, and we have many others because the goal of this project is really to develop this community-led coalition. And so there are a lot more people, kind of TBD, to be added on. And so I'm representing University of Hawaii Sea Grant program based here at the University of Hawaii in Honolulu. So it's great to be here. Thank you. And could you hit the next slide, please? So the inspiration for this project, which was to develop a Pacific Islands Community Action Coalition around marine debris, really came from our local Marine Debris Action Plan and working group here in Hawaii. And so on the right, you can see all these different organizations that include nonprofits, educational organizations, federal partners, state partners, who are engaged in this large consortium that meets regularly to develop this action plan and sort of action items around marine debris. And so we're part of that, and looking at that, we were thinking this is great and this is really exciting and it's facilitating a lot of collaboration and important work, but what about the rest of the Pacific and the other Pacific Islands who are facing similar problems as we are? And so that's sort of where the inception came from. Next slide, please, Maddie. And so the goals of this project are really to build local partnerships to address marine debris at the community level. And that means engaging people, as I said, from numerous sectors and types of organizations, and then sort of building on that to enhance community literacy around marine debris through education. And hopefully that feeds back into these local partnerships and organizational engagement. And then through education and enhancing literacy, we're working on developing a local marine debris aware workforce. So at Hawaii Sea Grant, we work closely with educational institutions in American Samoa, as well as in Guam and the Marshall Islands. And so we look forward to engaging our partners in all of those places to pull students into this work. And then we're also working closely with folks who you'll hear from, I believe, tomorrow, who are working on Marine Debris Challenge competition projects. And so we're sort of folding into this, providing technical support to them as well as local stakeholders to mitigate marine debris impacts, and really addressing topics that range from existing planning efforts all the way through strategic plans and developing kind of programs and thinking through how can we work together to seek funding to really address these issues. And so again, we're hoping to build on this very local network of folks here in Hawaii, engage our state and regional partners, and then just expand that model throughout the Pacific. Next slide, please. And so when we think about the breadth of the partnership network and the places where we actively work, we're talking about Hawaii, which includes the main Hawaiian Islands, which are populated, as well as the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, which is not populated by humans, but very populated by marine organisms, a lot of endemism, a really important place biologically and culturally that you'll hear more about, as well as American Samoa, the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, Palau, Guam, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. So this is a massive geographic scope, but we are all island communities here in the Pacific, linked by common threats from largely, in many places, derelict fishing gear, but also some place-based issues like we've been hearing about more today. But we, next slide, actually, and I'll continue talking. But it's important to note that those were just the sort of US affiliated Pacific Islands, but marine debris, derelict fishing gear, and any other issue that we can think of in this region obviously is not bound by these geopolitical lines, which are imaginary, right? And so when we're thinking about developing a Pacific Islands network, it's important that even if our sort of primary focus is on these US affiliated Pacific Islands, that we're engaging our partners and our colleagues and our neighbors throughout the Pacific. And so that becomes this really rich, broad network of people throughout this entire region who, again, are facing very similar threats, not only explicitly from things like derelict fishing gear, but we're layering that on top of these ongoing threats to our communities from climate change, coral bleaching events, sea level rise, and a variety of other issues. And so it's important that we're thinking of it in this holistic sense. Next slide. And then going a step further, we're excited to be here talking with all of you today because we're also hopeful to sort of link this network to what's happening in the continental US and the Sea Grant organizations there. And we've also been having conversations with Republic of Korea Sea Grant, who are developing their own marine debris program. And so we're excited to think through how we can take this model, again, built on this local Hawaii-based model, and sort of continue expanding it as applicable to get regional solutions that are really informed by and grounded in local needs, local knowledge. So next slide. And in terms of anticipated outputs, I should be transparent that we're just getting started over here. We've had a series of delays that have led to us sort of just being able to receive funds and get going, but we're really looking forward to building these partnerships and community resilience, and as a result, developing coalition longevity. We're working with a lot of organizations that maybe have collaborated before in the past on other things and are actively collaborating on other issues. And so we're trying to think through how do we make marine debris part of this broader conversation about addressing the needs of our colleagues and partners throughout the Pacific, and in doing so, fold it into these sort of ongoing long-term conversations about how to address our issues, not only marine debris, but also everything else I mentioned earlier related to climate change, coastal health, and sort of the myriad of other things that we're facing. And so I think in doing that, we're hopeful that it will build this longevity and it won't just be sort of a one-time conversation about marine debris. And of course, in building a partnership network, really the hope is just to create space for people to have these conversations and then to move forward working together to seek funding that can help really begin to address the problems at their core, and not sort of just one-time removal situations. Next slide. And so in terms of beyond the sort of abstract partnership building, coalition building, collaboration, which are all really important and critical, like sort of the foundational element of this work, we're also planning to put forth a Pacific Islands Regional Marine Debris Action Plan, again, modeled off of this Hawaii-based Marine Debris Action Plan that can outline sort of the overlap, the areas of overlap in terms of need, while also detailing some of the specific local place-based needs that might vary in terms of things like waste infrastructure capacity. For example, if we're talking about removing nets from reefs, we need to be sure there's somewhere to put those nets once we pull them out of the water. We need to be sure that where we're putting them is not somewhere where they're going to be impacting other systems. And so this is really important, especially when we think about working in places that are geographically remote, that have perhaps existing issues with how we can handle and process waste. We're all on islands, so space is an absolute premium for all of us. And so this is something that we're looking forward to sort of thinking through and breaking down, again, at this regional scale. Where do we overlap? Where do we have the same needs? And then on a local scale, and really driven and informed by people in these places, what are the very specific local needs that need to be addressed? And hopefully in outlining those in this document, that makes it easier for people who want to help, who want to collaborate to work towards these solutions, to look and say, oh, okay, we can help with these things. These are manageable, or maybe this one we need to work together to find a solution at a bigger scale. Next slide. And as I mentioned, we're also working closely with our collaborators at Jen Lynch at the Center for Marine Debris Research, as well as the crew at Papahanaumokuakea Marine Debris Removal Project. And so in doing that, we're looking forward to lending sort of education and outreach support to these technical efforts to mitigate marine debris impacts. And what's really awesome about having this synergy between the Community Action Coalition project with these other Marine Debris Challenge projects is that we're hopeful that we'll be able to sort of translate some of that technical support and expertise that gets developed through those projects that are based here in Hawaii and in the monument to our collaborators and partners throughout the Pacific again. And so that's something that I think is really powerful about this suite of projects that we're able to work on together. And so we're really looking forward to hopefully doing that. Next slide. And another thing that is very foundational to this work and to all of the work that we do here at Hawaii Sea Grant is following these best practices for community engagement, which we've outlined in this guideline document, the Kulana Noi'i, which really centers community-based work in a way that is following the lead of community experts, cultural experts, people who have been caretakers and knowledge holders for the places that we work for generations, and not assuming that we might know best and stepping into that space. And so this is really focused on building and nurturing pilina, which is a Hawaiian word for essentially relationship building, and it centers respect and reciprocity, as well as self-awareness of your own capacity and transparent communication. And kind of really critical components of this is maintaining a long-term focus. We're often thinking of the step-in generation principle. So we're not wanting to step into these places and talk about solutions for this year, but rather for generations to come that are really going to be sustainable and able to be led and sustained by communities. And baked into that is sort of honoring the knowledge that is held in these places, and a lot of accountability for everyone. And so this is something that's important to us that we just wanted to share as a foundational piece of this work. Next slide. And at Sea Grant, Hawaii Sea Grant, we also do a lot of science education. So we have a TV series that's been going for 10 seasons that airs 30-minute TV episodes in Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam, Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands. And these episodes have focused in the past on marine debris issues, like this example here of beach cleaning machines. And so we're excited to continue engaging this massive outreach and education tool that we have to sort of help support and promote the work that happens with this coalition. Next slide. We also have a magazine that goes out, the Kapili Kai, which has variety of different focuses, but we have an issue on marine debris, and so that's exciting and really highlights the work that's being done by some of our partners in this project, as well as sort of future work that will be happening. And we're excited to continue folding in what happens with this Community Action Coalition into future issues of this, which gets disseminated broadly throughout Hawaii and the Pacific. Next slide. And finally, Beth Lenz, who's not able to be here today, but is our director, assistant director of a variety of things, including community engagement, leads this really amazing program, I guess you could call it, that's actually happening right now in Hawaii, where it's a month-long exhibit of science art. And so they host a series of talks, there's music, it's this really incredible community engagement event. We had the kickoff last Friday and the place was packed shoulder to shoulder. And so this is another great opportunity to highlight the work that comes out of this coalition, and not only for Hawaii-based artists, but artists throughout the Pacific, to really bring attention and awareness to the issue of marine debris in an engaging and exciting interactive way. And also we have nerd nights here, which are science talks, informal science talks hosted at a local bar. Members from the Center for Marine Debris Research, you'll be hearing about later, did some great talks on marine debris, and we're hopeful to have another series focusing again on this future and forthcoming work. And so these are just examples of the kinds of community engagement that we're doing locally to help sort of bridge the gap between science, art, education, and outreach. Next slide. And so with that, I will wrap it up, and I'm happy to take any questions if there's time. If not, that's my contact information. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. I think we can just squeeze in a quick question, which is, are there plans to connect this project to the Palau Pledge?
I have not been working specifically in Palau in the past. I don't know that that was an original sort of intention as proposed, but certainly, as I mentioned, we're really looking for ways to integrate the conversation about marine debris, about this coalition building, into all of the many existing conversations that are happening, like Palau Pledge, throughout the Pacific, so that we're not overburdening people with asking people to have yet another meeting to talk about yet another separate issue that is widespread but also locally based. And so I think it's a yes and no. No, it wasn't part of the original plan, but yes, moving forward, we're really looking for any and every opportunity to include this in existing conversations, because as you saw, it's a massive region. There's a huge number of partners. There's a ton of issues and existential threats that communities are facing throughout the Pacific. And so it's really important to be respectful of that and find, have broad conversations where possible. So yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you for a wonderful talk. And we can move along to Maine Marine Debris Community Action Coalition, a community education and research development initiative to develop new materials and uses from ghost traps. Our speakers are Buzz, Dana, and James. There's Buzz, James, and Dana. Are you able to turn on your cameras? Okay, there's James, great.
This is Dana. My computer is telling me that my camera won't work until I quit out of the program and then restart. So maybe I should just go on video mute for a moment.
Yeah, as long as we can hear you, that's the most important thing. No worries. All right, let's get started. Take it away, guys.
Well, thanks. I've got a quick job here. And that's good. My name is Dana Morse. I'm with the Maine Sea Grant Program and University of Maine Cooperative Extension. I'm kind of the setup guy, and I'll tell you right at the outset, I don't have any expertise in the areas that you're going to hear about, but the partners that you'll hear about later, Buzz Scott and James Rudder, do. And it's been a joy to me to be able to work with both of them as kind of a, I don't know, like a helper to make this program go, even without any real knowledge. I will say at the moment, and I'm going to take just a moment here to brag on him a little bit. Buzz Scott's program has done some very creative and needed work in an arena that's not necessarily easy to work in. And you'll hear later from James about how he's been able to build some really needed and, in my view, highly unusual capacity that deals with education and things like equipment options and prototyping and processes for plastics. I'll stop there, and I've got one slide to show you. So next slide, please. Buzz and I had known each other for a while, kind of looking for a way to work together. James and I were introduced by a mutual colleague, and we had a project to do some plastics work together. And then this opportunity came up, and so the three of us have put our heads together. And this collaboration expands that work and kind of takes it into a couple different avenues that you'll hear more from Buzz and James on. But there are three general bins here. First of all is to develop some new methods and some technological designs for marine debris recovery and refabrication. We are a fishing and aquaculture heavy state. Those industries are heavily dependent on plastic products. So our philosophy here is, can we recover material at the end of life or even beyond when it's in the marine debris sphere, and maybe reuse it somehow? Certainly recapture it, but if we can refabricate it, that's a great win. We want to engage people through some educational programming, community experiences, and workforce development opportunities, because all the things that we're talking about involve a really broad spectrum of topical areas, everything from marine biology to engineering, product development, business, all that kind of stuff. And so it can be really engaging. And then thirdly, because plastics obviously is a very difficult problem to solve, if you will, it's going to take a lot of brains and a lot of ideas. And so a big part of our project focuses on trying to do some outreach and get people together so that we can trade information and hopefully together arrive at some real practical solutions that will kind of help out the environment and maybe some business opportunities there as well. I will say that we do have an advisory committee on this that's made up of microplastics experts, engineers, teachers, fishing and aquaculture people, and they help keep us grounded. I'll stop there. Next up will be Buzz Scott, and thanks, Buzz.
Buzz, we're not able to hear you. I think I could hear you before though, so if you could do what you did before, that would be good. Still cannot hear you.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you, James.
Okay.
Let's give it another minute. Still can't hear Buzz.
Buzz, try clicking on the microphone icon to just toggle it on and off. Yeah.
Not working. Oh. Okay.
Buzz, should we talk through your slides so that we can get people to go?
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, so I'll try to channel my best version of Buzz Scott. So Oceans Wide is an amazing organization that is doing the hard work of capturing and recovering these ghost traps. And why don't we go to the next slide and see if we can. So this is Buzz at the age of 10 years old. Let's go ahead to another slide. This is some background information about who Buzz is. I want to skip ahead to some of the work that they're doing. So next slide, please. Okay. So yeah, Buzz started Oceans Wide and working with kids and teaching them about how to things like diving and navigation, and eventually came on to recovering these ghost traps, which are in abundance in Maine. So let's skip ahead. I know there's a map here that he was going to show. And so, yeah, so go back one slide, sorry. So this is the boat and the ROV that they use, and they train kids on how to operate the ROVs and also on how to dive for the recovery of the ghost traps. And so that is one of their boats. Let's skip ahead. I think the next slide shows you some of the students learning how to dive. And they also use, I believe, these pools to train the students on how to operate the ROVs. So skip ahead. And so, yeah, so here are some images of the programs that they're running where they are working with students and recovering the traps. And you can see that these are washed up on the shore, but there is more at the bottom of the ocean. So let's skip ahead another slide. I believe this is like a sonar map of what it looks like at the bottom of the ocean floor. Next slide, please. And here are the traps coming up, just kind of covered in all the organic matter and barnacles. And next slide, please. And so, yeah, they have a lot of activity around recovering these traps and then processing the traps, which is sort of what I'll be talking about momentarily. They do a lot of the sorting and breaking down the traps into recyclable parts here. So you can see this is, I think, the start of the process here. Let's go to the next slide. Yes, this is the map. So here is all the area that they're working in. This is in Booth Bay Harbor, and it shows you kind of just the wide area that they're working in, recovering traps from the seafloor. All right, so next slide, please. And oh yes, I remember this slide. So this shows you on the left-hand side somebody holding the PVC coated lobster trap and how it's been sort of decomposing, and that ends up probably unsurprisingly into the wildlife in the ocean. And so that's a shrimp, I believe, and they took samples and found 100% of the larvae had samples of that plastic in their gut. And so the stuff, you know, the longer it sits, I'm sure, at the bottom of the ocean, the more it's contaminating the aquatic life. All right, so next slide. And this just shows you their facilities and the sheer amount of traps that they have. Let's go to the next slide. And so, yeah, so this is another shot of their facilities. You can see in the background, these are some of the crushed traps that have been processed that are going out and being recycled, and their team here, community service and volunteers. So next slide, please. And a great shot of all of the sorting and processing, and this will kind of set me up for what we're going to be doing with this material. But in the bottom right corner, you'll see a lot of the plastic components that have been taken out and sorted. And then there's other various things that they're sorting as they process all of this stuff. So next slide, please. And that is their crusher. That crushes the traps. Slide. And there's a bunch of traps going off for recycling. All right, let's skip ahead because I think we're almost out of time. All right, so this is me. I'm also going to be saying next slide, sorry. I didn't realize I was going to have to be not in control here. So anyways, this is Haystack. We're in Deer Isle, Maine. We're a craft school, so you may be thinking, why are you part of a marine debris coalition? So we'll skip ahead, but the point is that Haystack works with a lot of artists, and our interest is in providing sustainable materials for artists to use to develop creative applications and to integrate it into their work. And so we see our partnerships with the Maine Sea Grant and with Oceanswide as being able to source new materials for artists to work with and give it a new home and a kind of a new application. So we'll skip ahead. You can skip some, you just like cycle through these slides. You get to see this is Haystack. This is what people do. The Fab Lab here, we'll just pause real quick. We have kind of a technology center, a lot of prototyping equipment where, again, we have an interest in using more sustainably sourced materials or recycling materials that would otherwise be going to the landfill or are being recovered from the ocean. And so a lot of our machines work with plastic as an input. And so if that input material can be a recycled product, we have a huge interest in that. So we'll skip ahead, and I just want to show you some of the work that we're doing, and then I'll wrap. I know I think we're out of time here. So go ahead, a couple more slides. There's Buzz and Dana. And for those that are not aware, Precious Plastics is an amazing global community trying to educate the world and develop tools for recycling plastic. And so Haystack and this team here is becoming kind of a precious plastics zone in Maine, where we're teaching people how to recycle the plastic and then use the plastic to then make new things with it. And so these machines here, we have a set of them at our facilities, and we're going to be using them to make creative applications. And so we're also doing a number of educational programs, but I'll save that for maybe another time. If you want to just click through the remaining slides really quickly, there's some of our students, there's our prototyping machines. This is one of our educational programs working with a Maine-based artist doing a art installation, and I think that might be, we'll skip that one, but anyways, I think that's actually the end of the slides. So great, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. That was awesome to see what you guys are doing up in Maine. I'm curious if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll just ask, what has been your favorite part so far in this project?
I don't know if it's my favorite part, but I have gone down the rabbit hole of learning about plastic and recycling it. And it's like, I'm getting excited about the possibilities, but at the same time, the more I learn, the more troubled I get about the realities of the material itself and how we should be trying to avoid it as much as possible and finding alternatives. Getting it out of processing it itself, I'm also learning is, while interesting, it's also very energy intensive, and it takes a lot. And so it's exciting though, but working with the artists and coming up with the creative kind of things of what can we make with this material, that part is exciting.
Great. All right. Thank you, James, Buzz, and Dana. That was wonderful. We're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to be back at 3:30 for our next round of talks. And in the meantime, I'm just going to put this slide up to advertise our upcoming marine debris funding opportunities at Sea Grant. So we'll see you all in about 11 minutes. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Amara, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
I can hear you too. We're so advanced. Okay, perfect. I'm ready to go, and you have the slides, right? So I'm all
Maddie has
good.
the slides, so once we're off break, you'll be good to go.
Okay, awesome. I'll just be waiting patiently. Thank you.
No worries.
Not sure if anyone's around, but I just wanted to test my mic. Test, test.
You are good to go.
Thank you.
All right, hi everyone, welcome back. We're now going to launch into our next round of talks, which are also through our Community Action Coalition competition. And our first talk is Washington Coast Savers. Megan, are you on? There she is. All right, go ahead, Megan. Oh, we can't hear you.
It's all about the buttons.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thanks, Maddie, and good afternoon, everyone. As Maddie said, my name is Megan Duran. I'm the coordinator for Washington Coast Savers, and we've been coordinating beach cleanups along the Washington coast since 2007. And then, Maddie, I just tell you next. Is that next, please? So I'm going to talk about who we are at Washington Coast Savers, just give you an update on what we've been able to accomplish the last couple of years since I've been the coordinator, and then talk about what we're looking forward to doing with our Sea Grant projects starting next year. Next, please. So here at Washington Coast Savers, we are a program of the Washington Clean Coast Alliance, and that was formed in 2007 to coordinate marine debris cleanup efforts that agencies, organizations, and individuals have been conducting independently along the Washington coast as far back as 2017. So it's basically the umbrella of these beach cleanup organizations, providing an overall place to store the data, have a database of these cleanups, as well as connect and communicate with all of these different groups that do cleanups along the Pacific coast and now the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Next, please. So since some of you may not be as familiar with Washington State, we're up here in the upper left corner of the map, the very top, Pacific Northwest, and on the left side you can see, I don't know if you can see, is the Olympic Peninsula on the top there, and then along the west coast of Washington State. So that is our beach cleanup area. We do the Pacific coast as well as the Strait of Juan de Fuca, which is that area right across of Vancouver Island, as far as the Port Townsend area, if anyone's familiar with that. Next, please. So part of what we do here is coordinating these annual cleanups. So we do have these 3 annual cleanups. We have a spring cleanup that gets a lot of the winter debris out. So we have get about 15,000 pounds of debris the last couple of years. The 5th of July cleanup, which is along the central and south coast of the Washington State here, and just want to note that there's a large discrepancy in those in the data reported each year, and I think that was mostly because we weren't properly capturing all of the data that first year that I was the coordinator. It was a bit challenging to figure out all the players involved there when there wasn't any kind of SOP or any guidance left by the former coordinator to see how I could connect all of the different people involved in the July cleanup. So once I got a better understanding of what that looked like and who was involved there, you can see that the removal effort was quite substantial this year. And I just want to note too, in the past, I know the past coordinator had done estimated weights, and what we've moved to is tip weights. So these are all weights through the disposal company. And so just on that central and south coast, we had over 111,000 pounds of fireworks debris from that removed from that July event. And then we have that fall coastal cleanup that both doesn't get as many volunteers as the spring, nor does it collect as much debris with it being so late in the season. But we are pleased to say that in the last 2 years, we've had over 3,500 volunteers remove over 192,000 pounds, over 96 tons of marine debris from the Washington coast and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Next, please. So we are currently wrapping up our project Salish Synergy, working with some other organizations throughout the Salish Sea to deal with marine debris recycling, and we have been thankful for that NOAA Marine Debris Program grant. Want to note as well that we are under the fiscal sponsorship of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, so we are thankful for their support and guidance, as well as their fiscal management of our organization. Next, please. So while we have been working on that NOAA Marine Debris Program grant for the last couple of years, we're very much looking forward to working with Sea Grant Washington on our new grant that is starting in January that is called Clean Coast Quest, and we are on a quest here to keep our beautiful beaches clean and of marine debris. Next, please. So we have 4 different components of the of our grant that we're looking to start in January, and the first one is coordinating those annual cleanup events. So, like I said, those are long-standing events, and we'll continue those 3 coordinating those 3 cleanup events. Working with the Quinault Indian Nation is two different components to it. One is working with Tohola High School, doing education outreach with the students there. Another portion is doing the remote marine debris cleanups along their coastal beaches. And the last component is marine debris mapping, mapping large marine debris caches or large items along the Olympic Peninsula specifically. Next, please. So as I mentioned, we have these annual cleanup events. The Washington Coast Cleanup is an Earth Day celebration that takes place on the Saturday closest to Earth Day in April. And that takes place along the Pacific Coast and Strait of Juan de Fuca. We have different agencies, organizations, tribal nations, community groups who engage in these cleanups, and the majority of them do participate in that spring cleanup, since it does, since we do see a lot of debris coming up through winter storms, so that's why we get a lot more debris in the spring. And then on that top right photo is our work we did this spring with Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, as well as the Makah tribe. The 4th, 5th of July cleanup effort is an Independence Day firework event. And we see that along our central and south coast. And that is due to the fact that the areas on the north fireworks are banned. So we concentrate those cleanups on the central and south coast. On the right, you see the 2 state park rangers. We work closely with Washington State Parks. They provide us a lot of not only people power, but also support with disposal through paying for dumpsters and tip fees. And then we have the International Coastal Cleanup, where we join coastal communities from around the world on the 3rd Saturday of September to clean the Pacific Coast and Strait of Juan de Fuca beaches. And again, participation is just dependent on landowners. So like I said, some participate in the spring and not the fall. So it just depends on what the debris load is and what each landowner prefers. And then on the bottom right there is Surfrider, and we have a very close partnership with Surfrider as well, and they're instrumental to supporting our beach cleanup events. Next, please. So as part of working with the Quinault Indian Nation, we will be having that component working with Tohola High School. Jerry Walters, who's pictured here, he is the career and technical education teacher there at the high school. If you just look on the map on the left of the peninsula, it's at the bottom. It's on the southwest side of the Olympic Peninsula. And their school there is at Tohola, so it's just seen on that map. You can see they have a big, beautiful beach just right there fronting their village in Tohola. So we're going to work with the students to establish a marine debris monitoring program, and the other component will be creating outreach video, social media posts, and sort of PSA style outreach to get these kids involved both in technology as well as outreach to get work on marine debris prevention. And then because we are very well known for being cold and rainy here at our beaches in the winter, we are very thankful that the Sea Grant will also be providing the students with foul weather gear, so they're prepared to actually go outside and complete these assignments, as well as the digital equipment that they need to produce things like little videos, photos, as well as having a database for their marine debris monitoring program. Next, please. So the other component of working with the Quinault Indian Nation is working with them to do an annual remote beach cleanup. So their beaches are only open to tribal members. If you look on the map on the right there where I have the red dots, so Tohola is down on the south there. That's right near the mouth of the Quinault River. And then their remote beaches go from the Quinault up to the Queets on the north side of the map there. And so they do have 23 miles of beach that's mostly pretty remote access and also off limits for non-tribal members. So I'll be working with their natural resource department both to determine cleanup locations as well as to plan these events. The funding that we have also includes supporting tribal members with stipends to participate in these programs and bringing their ATVs out to help facilitate the cleanup and make it easy for us to be able to remove larger items, tires, heavy ropes, things like that. So that will be working with the Quinault Indian Nation, and then have a limited number of folks invited outside of the tribal community to participate in cleanups. So there, and we plan to do those cleanups in the spring. Next, please. So the last component, and just quick, when I said we plan to do those Quinault remote cleanups in the spring, it's going to be an annual spring event. So I do 3 of those remote cleanups. So the last component of the grant that we're very excited to work on is doing some mapping of marine debris along the Olympic Peninsula. So if you see on the map there, on the bottom is the Quinault Indian Nation, the more grayed out. So north of their beaches is either, is mostly Olympic National Park, but is also the grayed out areas are tribal nations. So we have 4 coastal treaty tribes along the Olympic Peninsula. On the north, we have the Makah tribe, the Quileute tribe is out of the La Push area, the Hoh tribe near the mouth of the Hoh River, and then, as I already mentioned, the Quinault Indian Nation, which is just south of the park there. There's also Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary has jurisdiction designation over the waters outside the Olympic Peninsula. And then, of course, in the green is Olympic National Park. We do also have U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a designation on some of these outer islands and rock outcroppings for wildlife refuges for birds and marine mammals. So there's many layers of different folks involved in the jurisdictions on the peninsula, and the Olympic Peninsula itself, the more northern areas, is more remote and rugged. So of the 73 miles of beach on Olympic National Park, 52 miles of it are designated as wilderness, mostly remote backcountry access. And this is pretty challenging. We have a lot of tidal chokes, headlands, massive drift logs, all kinds of obstacles to complicate travel. And because of that, and the way that the currents are bringing debris across the open ocean towards our shoreline, we do get remote marine debris accumulation of large items, as well as persistent caches, areas where people are thinking that they are doing a service to us by putting all this debris into these caches, but it does complicate things as far as making eyesore, degrading the wilderness character and things like that. So we're looking at documenting and assessing the amount of marine debris, large caches and large items that are found along that area, so that we can assist Olympic National Park in determining how we can move forward on marine debris removal efforts that will work within the parameters of the wilderness designation. Next, please. So this is a good example under our NOAA Marine Debris Program grant. We were fortunate in April of 2022 to work with Olympic National Park to remove this large cache that was found along the coastal wilderness. So there's this, as you can see in the after shot, there's a depression there just on the back of the beach that was getting filled by hikers with all of the marine debris that was accumulating on the beach. So for the most part, access to these areas is by people who are backpacking. So it's a real challenge because they're already carrying a lot of heavy equipment with the backpacking to try to also carry out any of this debris. So not only were we able to remove this debris, but we were fortunate with our current Salish Synergy recycling grant with Niger Problem and Ocean Legacy Foundation to actually recycle the majority of this cache, which was mostly foam floats, those hard fishing buoys, nets, ropes, counted. There was over 424 plastic single-use bottles. So we were very thankful for this opportunity as in a normal cleanup effort. Without this important recycling partnership, all of this material would have ended up being landfilled instead of given another chance at life. So we appreciate that, and we look forward to using this mapping to have these large-scale removal efforts, partnering with Olympic National Park in the future. Next, please. So we do have several different caches, like the one that was just in the previous slide that flashed by real quick, that are these large accumulations, like I talked about, and then as well as like in this upper left-hand corner of the photo here, it's a little hard to tell with the scale, but that light blue object is one of those big fishing totes. We've known that to be within the coastal wilderness of Olympic National Park for at least nearly 7 years. So once large items like this come up into these remote areas, it's really challenging to remove it. So part of that mapping effort is really understanding where these items are. So again, we can work with the National Park Service to put our efforts together to remove these types of items. Next, please. So here we just recently did a project with the Makah tribe, getting out to an area of theirs along that's nestled within the Olympic National Park coastline to remove some debris that had washed up. We're very thankful for all of these different connections and partnerships that we have. And I just think this is a great quote to represent all the different folks that we work with, and how unity is strength, and when there is teamwork and collaboration, wonderful things can be achieved. And I'm very happy that in the last 2 years we've been able to achieve lots of wonderful things, and I'm looking forward to the new projects that we're going to be undertaking under this Sea Grant to achieve more wonderful things in the future. Next. So thank you all. Again, my name is Megan Drown. I'm the coordinator for Washington Coast Savers. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email is coordinator@coastsavers.org. And this is we did a cleanup last year with the Makah tribe, and we unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, there was a cache of these hard plastic buoys, and we actually tied them all together and then tied them to our waist and drug them along the beach. So we were able to get like 20 of these roped together and trudge them down the beach. So we are thankful for all of our different partnerships, and again, look forward to the new projects that we have with Sea Grant in the future.
Great, thanks Megan, that was great. We are at time, so we're going to move right along to
Perfect.
Oregon Coalition to Combat Marine Debris with Tracy and Kate.
Thank you so much for having us. My name is Tracy Cruz, and I am the Associate Director for Education for Oregon Sea Grant. And with us today is also Kate Goodwin, who is our Sea Grant Special Projects Coordinator. Can we have the next slide, please? So like many of these projects, we have connected very closely our project to the Oregon Marine Debris Action Plan. So this is our statewide plan to address marine debris issues. The ones that we have highlighted here are bolded. Goal number 1 and number 3 are the ones that we really focused this project on, so prevention and coordination. Next, please. So specific goals for this project, which is the Oregon Marine Debris Community Coalition grant, are to really bring together cross-sector representation, researchers, industry, educators, and students from multiple levels, as well as the public, to try to identify specific issues that we are seeing in our local areas and find ways to address them. So we are looking at increasing awareness, not only of the various items of marine debris that we are seeing, but also the impacts to the local ecosystems and also how they're actually escaping and getting into the environment. And then really focusing on ways that we can address them, so solutions-focused activities. The last thing also is that we, of course, would like to share best practices and make sure that folks have the data that is needed to make good decisions in order to try to reduce marine debris and not just go out and clean it up, which is important, but find ways to keep it from getting there in the first place. Next, please.
Thanks, Tracy. So the way we will accomplish our goals is through a variety of education and outreach activities that we'll go through here in more detail in the coming slides. But we've listed them here in order of increasing audience age. So for example, marine debris curriculum, we have available for grades 4 through 12 students and teachers. And in fact, this picture is a 4th grader showing her engineering solutions ideas to an engineer. And that's one of our strategies, is to reach those teachers and students. But also the Youth as Inventors program is a high school engineering design challenge, which takes place after school, and we'll talk more about that. At the college level, we have the Oregon Applied Sustainability Experience internships, which is for 3rd and 4th year undergraduates and graduate students. To work on solutions. And then community repair fairs are targeting not only the students in the above buckets, but also the general public. All of these communities, all of these activities rather, are focused on solutions and include multi-sector community groups to identify and implement prevention strategies to reduce marine debris, and all promote science, data literacy, and in many cases, career-connected learning. Next slide, please. So to focus in on the curriculum part, we've been working on marine debris education for a number of years. And through workshops and teacher support, we promote curriculum and tools that we have made and that others have created. And for this project, we'll be promoting some of our most recent products to teachers for grades 4 through 12. For example, the marine debris interruptions, which was began to be created right when the pandemic started. And these lessons focus on single items and the life cycle of those items, so students can get to know one particular type and trying to interrupt its escape into the environment where it becomes marine debris. And another lesson type is from the ORSI project, which is the Oregon Marine Scientists and Educator Alliance, which works with researchers and students or teachers together to make lessons. And so, and this is an example of one focused on marine debris and microfibers in particular in deep sea fishes. So the project activities we have for disseminating this curriculum is to conduct teacher professional development workshops. We just had one in September with a lot of enthusiasm and are planning more for the winter. And then providing teacher support as they actually implement the lessons and with their students, particularly connecting the teachers and students with the scientists and industry professionals that can help answer questions and talk about their careers at the same time. Next slide, please. So here's some more about that marine debris interruptions project. This is just a screenshot of the webpage where the lessons are available. There are 3 complete lessons on 3 different items: yellow rope, plastic wads, and balloons, but also a lot of support for following the similar kind of lesson format for other items that may be of interest. For example, somebody who finds 111,087 pounds of fireworks debris might be interested in fireworks as an item. Oh my goodness, I wrote that down. So the next slide, please. Lessons follow the 5E instructional model that connects to a common anchoring phenomenon and driving questions. So whatever it is you're focusing on, what is it doing on the beach? Where is it coming from? And the 5E model goes through these 5E sections, starting with what is it? Sometimes it's commonly known, like what a sand toy is, for example, that keeps being found on a beach. Students are familiar with that. And sometimes it's not as obvious. It's like a very distinct piece of plastic that you're not really sure where it came from or what it is. It has an intriguing shape. And people get excited about learning, trying to figure out its story and where it's being found. So that beach collection data comes in from important partners who are collecting those data from their beach cleanups, and the students learn about the material itself. Does it float? Does it get pushed around by the wind? And by the explain point, if they haven't already figured it out, they learn the original use of the item from community members who have intimate knowledge of that material and the people who use that material, and learn the life cycle of the item and figure out where along its cycle this item is escaping, and then try to identify ways to prevent that escape. Maybe it's an engineering solution, maybe it's a process, maybe it's replacing the material with something else, but they're working with community members to help with their ideas. And when they come up with their final proposals, they share those designs with the community. Next slide, please. And then here's the other type of lesson, which is actually also on a 5E model with the anchoring phenomenon, which is from the Oregon Marine Scientist and Educator Alliance. This is a Sea Grant program that matches marine science researchers with middle and high school math and science teachers. And over the course of the year, they create lessons based on that researcher's science. And so this one is about microfiber pollution, and that's what the scientist was studying. And she studies fibers found in deep sea fishes. So the lesson goes through that 5E model and ends with some solutions that students can identify and propose. And this was really important. One of the teachers who helped create this particular lesson, her students and she live on the eastern edge of Oregon, where there's not a lot of ocean. So connecting her students to marine debris in the Oregon coast was really important. And this was a great way to do that because we all do laundry. Next slide, please.
So in addition to the lessons and the teacher workshops and working with the younger students that Kate just talked about, we also are partnering with OSU pre-college programs, OSU, Oregon State University, for the Youth as Inventors program. And so this was a program that was originally created. It's invention education, and it's funded by Lemelson Foundation. So we are partnering with them, and while they are supporting the college engineering students and the staff from their end, we are paying high school students to participate with their teachers. So both the high school students and the teachers get paid to participate in this after school and out of school project. Essentially, small teams are formed. With the high school students, they investigate with our community partners some of the issues. They work with their OSU engineering student mentors and mentors from our innovation lab that we have here at Hatfield Marine Science Center to come up with some ideas, to get some feedback. After a few weeks of working on this in their classes after school, they then come to the Innovation Lab at Hatfield Marine Science Center. They spend 3 full days there with the engineering students and our staff working through the actual prototyping and testing of their designs. And then they present it in a public forum as well. And so what you have here are student groups from this last year. So June they finished up, and here on the Oregon coast we have a lot of tourists, we have a lot of wind. So the trash tomb there is a clear receptacle that will not be blown over, but it can be put in parks and stuff, and they can easily see when it's full or not, the trash can. Similar to the Bee-Bot, you have the trash gator that the students created there, which is supposed to be both educational when tourists would see this on the beach, but is intended to be manually pushed and would actually scoop up some of the trash on the beach. And then you also have the last design. Since we are in a tourist area, we actually have a whale here that shoots up water in one of the local communities. So they got this idea that they could create a trash receptacle that when people put things in from the beach area, that it would blow a chute up, and it would also have, similar to your water bottle filler uppers, it would weigh the trash and tell you how much is being removed from the beach when you are cleaning it up. So just 3 kind of ideas that they came up with during this short project. Next.
And OASE, or the Oregon Applied Sustainability Experience, is an existing program coordinated by Oregon Sea Grant with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. And this project is also a collaborative, solution-focused effort between students and industry. So OASE engages college-age students who serve as 10-week summer interns, and students evaluate policies and practices in order to identify ways to reduce pollution. So for this project, the interns will be focused on ways to reduce marine debris generated by host business sites. So tourism, fishing, other sectors could be represented. Solutions might include using alternative materials, changes to system processes, developing best management practices, and so on. So we're currently recruiting host businesses this winter for intern placements this summer. So we're excited about that. And some of these projects with the older students are building on some of the work done by the younger. So it's actually a really great opportunity for peer-to-peer mentoring. Next slide.
And then the last component that we're going to talk about are community repair fairs. So once again, partnering with our innovation lab, which has everything from extruders and 3D printers to electronics labs with soldering stations and everything. We will be running these day-long workshops where our public can come in, they can take classes so that they increase their own skills to repair things, or if they're just interested in getting something repaired, we are partnering with things like the local bike shop so that they can get their equipment and pieces repaired rather than having it enter the waste stream. And in addition to getting things repaired, we're also going to be working with some of our artists and craft folks to do some upcycling. So everything from creating shopping bags, so you have to pay for plastic bags and stuff here in Oregon, to out of t-shirts, to woven mats, to we have a local business here that recycles fishing the rope into various items. And so it's going to be a showcase of different ways that you can repurpose materials in addition to the opportunity to repair materials. And so really using this opportunity also to invite our waste management companies that can help educate the changes that have gone on as far as recycling goes, what is recyclable, and then also a lot of our waste management companies have also gone to composting, and so some information and classes about those as well. Next, please. So that pretty much wraps it up, and we are happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Kate and Tracy. That was so interesting, and I love the community repair idea. That's great. I have a question. What have you found to be most surprising so far while working on this project?
Surprising. The thing that really excites me about this project is finding something that I don't know what is and working with the students and the community to find out what it is and find out the story. And I guess encouraging as well as surprising is everyone's enthusiasm for trying to figure it out. and working together so that students can see that the adults are also interested in this topic and also interested in solutions, and that they're listening to the students' ideas. It's a very positive outcome. And yeah, so surprisingly exciting.
Yeah, I guess I would just add that, you know, as Kate said, so lots of enthusiasm around this particular project, not just for identifying things you find on the beach, but the willingness of all of these groups and partners to donate their time or to leverage, you know, their own staff and other grants. And then we're just essentially paying a portion to support the actual marine education side of it. So it's been really great to see how many people are interested and willing to partner with us to move this forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we can keep moving on to mitigation of stormwater derived debris, a community-based approach with Christy.
Hi, can you hear me okay? I hope.
Yep.
So I'm Christy Tyler, and I'm at the Rochester Institute of Technology. We are on Lake Ontario, so I was happy to see some of the other Great Lakes-based projects. And we're just really getting started with this, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about is kind of what made us get to this point and put together this community-based project. And then before starting that, I want to acknowledge the people on the slide with me who are kind of the core team that have conceived of the project. So Nathan Eddingshaus and Matt Hoffman are faculty here at RIT with me. Matt is actually the one who came up with that 22 million pounds of plastic entering the Great Lakes. Katie Stoss is our environmental educator at RIT. Mary Osterman is a New York Sea Grant, and then Jake Anderson is a new Sea Grant extension aide. And his hire was possible because of this grant. So we're really excited to have somebody right in Rochester and at RIT to work on these issues with us. So we're working on stormwater debris and primarily on macroplastic. So I wanted to kind of give a background on why we took this approach. So next slide. So why stormwater debris? In the oceans, about 98% of the plastic that comes in to the ocean, this is by mass, is macroplastic, so it's big. Even though we hear a lot about microplastic, a lot of it is still big. And stormwater is a pretty understudied but a big debris pathway for this kind of debris. The infrastructure for stormwater is really variable and I think sometimes kind of confusing to people with where does the water go when it goes down the drain? And the last bullet here is roughly 2/3 of the residents, based on we do these community surveys every 3 years, but the residents in Rochester don't know where the stormwater goes when it goes down the drain. And it gets even more confusing when you have different kinds of sewer systems. So one of our objectives really is to kind of make that connection for people, and that the water and anything with it that goes down the drain is ultimately likely to come back in your drinking water. And with stormwater, there's also a lot of microplastic that's entering that, and it's about 10 times higher than wastewater treatment plants. And then once the water, if it goes through a wastewater treatment plant, it doesn't emit macroplastic. So by working in systems where we've got different kinds of stormwater infrastructure, we have an opportunity to help with this problem. So next slide. Where the stormwater goes is confusing. This is a map of the city of Rochester, which is outlined in black, and this is on the south shore of Lake Ontario. And the blue lines in here are the stormwater drains, or the combined sewer drains, where it's both the wastewater and the stormwater go together to a treatment plant. So the chance of that macroplastic getting out to the lake are smaller unless we have a combined sewer overflow event, which is increasing in frequency with the change in precipitation patterns. We're getting a lot more really big storms, and so these combined sewer overflow events are increasing, in which case untreated sewage and stormwater goes right out to either the Genesee River or Irondequoit Bay, which are the two major outlets to the lake here. But then the red and green are the separate sewer systems. So that's where the sanitary sewer is separate, goes to the treatment plant, but the storm sewer will go straight out to the river or the bay.
And so in that case, anything on the street that's carried in the stormwater is ending up right in the lake. The other thing I wanted to point out with this map is this sort of lavender shading are the environmental justice areas in our city. And there are a lot of them. The majority of the city is actually an environmental justice area. We have the second highest child poverty rate in the country. So we have a lot of opportunity to bring kids into the problem and work on empowerment and solving environmental issues right in local neighborhoods. Next slide. So with the idea of how much debris there is, that's something we're working on with our new funding, but it's also something we've been working on for the last couple of years with a research grant from the NOAA Marine Debris Program and also through a prevention grant that was part of the Mexico-Canada agreement, and we're collaborating with the Council of the Great Lakes region on this project. And so we've installed these trap capture technologies called LIDA traps. I'll talk more about what those are in a minute, but we've got them in 9 locations in the city and in a suburb, and they're split between residential and commercial streets to try to get an idea of how much debris actually is coming in through stormwater. Because this is something we really don't know, and it's part of a larger research project to try to identify the gaps in knowledge on how much debris is actually entering the lake. These estimates of how much debris enters the lake or the ocean are all based on models and not much on actual data. So this is what was really the start of the current grant that we're just getting going on. So next slide. The image on the left is actually from a TikTok video that our news department put together. If anyone's interested, I can send it because it actually shows how these devices work. But the LIDA trap is it's by Enviropod, which is a company from New Zealand. It's a really simple device, so there's not a lot of chance of things breaking and no motors or anything like that. And it's a basket that's inserted into the catch basin. And then you come along periodically. We've been doing that every 2 to 6 weeks, go out around and clean it out. And so this is some of what it kind of looks like when you're there. The larger debris gets trapped on top, and that can be brought back and recycled. And then the smaller debris goes into the catch basin and is caught in the mesh. Next slide. So this is what a sample looks like. They're pretty heterogeneous and mixed, and a variety of things come into them, but we bring them back to the lab. They get dried and then sorted. We remove all the leaves and other organic debris, and then start a categorization process. Next. So everything gets sorted by the category of material. And this part is actually really important because this is some of what we will be having kids do in the grant we're just starting to figure out the source of these different kinds of materials. And then it's also sorted by the type of material it is. With the research project, we're also doing kind of other identifiers and some aging studies and that kind of thing on the materials. So next slide. Okay, so this is one drain from 1 2-week period, and it's split out into the different types of materials that we're finding. But just for some perspective, this is one drain, 1 2-week period, and there's 30,000 storm drains in the city. So this gives some idea of the amount of material that's entering our waterways all the time. And this is from a separate sewer drain. So all of this goes straight out to the lake, and a lot of it's relatively small. So even kind of coarse filters at the end of these are not catching this type of debris. Next slide. And then this is what some of the data looks like. And so this is really where we started thinking about, okay, what do we do about this? Because we were realizing the problem is really, really local. And it varies on a very small spatial scale. Some of these are within a couple hundred meters of each other, the paired commercial and residential sites. And so it varies between summer and winter in terms of the composition, with things like food wrappers and beverage containers and cigarette butts. but it also varies a lot spatially. So what's coming in at one location is really different than it is in another area. The materials that we were finding often are not really recognizable, a lot of them, so that's this big red miscellaneous bar, but others are cigarette butts, which we're finding a really surprising number that come in on a regular basis. And then things like food wrappers and beverage containers, which was not as surprising, but it's a very local phenomenon in terms of even just the brand of materials that we're finding. Next slide. So that was what brought us to this idea that we really needed to be working on kind of engagement of the community at a really local level. And I liked what someone else was saying about kind of not like neighborhood shaming, but rather bringing people into the problem to develop a solution. And so that's one of the things we really want to do is engage communities at a really local level, especially the local kids. Another objective is to try to broaden the public understanding of the stormwater system in general. So where does the water go when it goes down the drain, and how might people actually be connected to that water when it comes back through their tap? And I think that the visibility of plastic and this other types of debris is really important because it's a very obvious type of thing. All of the kids that are involved are then going to be using the data that they're collecting through their local neighborhoods to promote action at the municipal level. And there's a lot of marketing and branding that we're working on. Rochester has a Rock the Riverway weekend every year, so we will be hosting a large-scale event for that. And then ultimately, we're hoping that both the technology, this trash capture technology, and then the outreach and programming can be transferable elsewhere because these types of devices are easy to use and install and to maintain. Okay, next slide. Right, there's lots on this slide, but our ultimate goal, is, I think that's for all of these projects, is reducing anthropogenic debris. In our case, it's for Lake Ontario. But with the activities that we're working on for this are the engagement of kids, mostly K-12, in informal education around the monitoring of stormwater debris. We're involving high school students in leadership roles. And then all of these students together will be doing outreach in the neighborhoods through signage, flyers, door hangers, storm drain markers, and local cleanup events. We're also working with the local zoo, the Seneca Park Zoo, and the Rochester Museum and Science Center. And our H2O hero is our kind of local stormwater hero that they're involved with us. So a lot of the deliverables, we'll be creating a data set for stormwater debris. And this is locally collected debris by the kids that then can use their own skills to be developing strategies and solutions through enhanced civic engagement. We want to increase knowledge of the stormwater system and then especially be able to increase kind of career readiness in environmental careers, but these are also transferable skills that the youth will be able to use in any career or in college, and then updating materials so they can be transferable. With outcomes hopefully being an increased attitude and civic engagement and environmental stewardship on a really local level. Next slide. All right, these are the list of our community partners, and some of them are new that we are forging new relationships with, and some RIT has been working with for a really long time. We're excited to be working with New York Sea Grant on this, and like I said, to have some local staff right on campus and in the city. We're working with the county and the city. They are helping us with installing the litter traps and also with the recreation program. The Seneca Park Zoo Society is the education arm of the zoo, our science museum, and then a lot of other local organizations and consultants. the storm drain marker here where it says keep clean drains to the lake, that's Larry, who's our H2O hero. And that program has been a really great local water quality education program. Next slide. Right, so each of the sites that we have selected were selected because of the educational opportunities that were afforded by them. We'll be working with 3 of the city-run recreation centers. The 2 that we're working with right now for this first year of the project serve a 90% minority and 50% below poverty limit residential base, and then 2 schools that are also in underserved communities. Each site gets 2 litter traps in order to monitor the local debris. We're working with the Seneca Park Zoo and the Science Museum, and those broaden the impact a lot by being able to reach a much broader community base. Those sites are also getting litter traps installed there. And together they reach almost 800,000 people a year. So we have a really awesome opportunity to reach a large community in the region. Next slide. All of the programming is designed around this trash capture technology. So our IT students and the New York City Grant staff are going to be facilitating the debris collection. And some of what we'll be doing is that our students and staff are going to be the ones going out to help collect the debris and then bring it back to campus to do kind of the initial processing and sorting, because we get a lot of materials that we don't want children to have to be touching. So we want them to know that they're there, but we have to be careful of things like needles, broken glass. There can be other things that we don't really want in there. Although one of my students' favorite pieces of debris she's ever found is a whole hot dog that she got in her sample. But each center is going to be developing programming. Some of it will be very specific to the center and the neighborhood that it's in, and some of it will be common across all the centers with a real focus on youth empowerment. But the kids at each center will participate in the collection, sorting, counting, and analysis of the data so that they're able to take ownership of that data and then the results that they're finding. Next slide. So then the data that they're collecting will be analyzed, and we're working on storytelling skills. So this is another sample of debris that was found in one of the catch basins. So I think that there's a lot of really interesting stories that children can be developing about how did this Snickers wrapper get here? What's the story of that wrapper? How can we work on upstream messaging in order to prevent it from getting there? What's the problem? Is it a lack of trash cans? Is it a lack of understanding of where the water goes? And having the kids develop these marketing and branding strategies to go out into their neighborhoods. And so we really want to be working on empowering the kids to develop the promotional content and the solutions that are local. Next slide. The mentoring and career development part of it is integral. At each of our sites, we have opportunities for high school students to lead the program and to be working with the younger children. So at the rec centers and the schools, we included funding for high school mentors for the kids. And then at the zoo, they have an urban ecologist's career development program for city high school students who work as environmental stewards out in the city, and the Science Museum has a career ladder program for high school students. So we're engaging all of these students. We're forming a committee of high school students that are working with the project, working also on college readiness and mentoring, bringing them to campus, having them work with college students in order to think about what the next steps may be in environmental careers. Next slide. And then we're also building on some of the existing programming at some of our regional science-based institutions. So at the zoo, the Urban Ecologist program I just mentioned, they have a nature cart where they go out into the community and do programming. We're working with litter trap technology and debris there. They're hosting monthly cleanup events and have been doing that with us for the past year. In those cleanup events, because it's hosted by the zoo, we do things like use giraffe feed bags as the bags to collect the debris in. They often publish or publicize the amount of debris collected in terms of some animal at the zoo, like enough to equal an adult male elephant, which is, I think those are some of the nice things about doing that. They also have a local Genesee River and H2O Hero exhibit at the zoo. So it's the local ecology, and that picture right there is one of the exhibits at the zoo. And then with the Science Museum, where we're working with their career ladder students, they facilitate the live science exhibit. We're also working with the Science on a Sphere, which is a NOAA video display tool that we've already created, a plastic pollution in the Great Lakes video and other types of videos that we'll be integrating with. We recently opened a new exhibit called Wonders of Water, which is in the bottom picture. And we'll be working on integrating more messaging about debris into that exhibit, and also working with green infrastructure there. So I think the last slide is just acknowledging a lot of the funding sources, and then also that we work with really a lot of people. And I'm really excited to be in the process of launching this project and seeing where it will go.
Great, thank you so much, Christy. We are up on time, so we're going to keep moving along. Thank you for that wonderful talk. And the next talk is called From Learning to Willing to Doing. Go right ahead, thanks.
Thank you, Maddie. So I'm here to talk about a project called From Learning to Willing to Doing, and really about a collaborative approach to implementing the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. Next slide, please. So I'm Wee Youssef, and I'm here representing a project team that includes Troy Hartley with Virginia Sea Grant and Jennifer Whitlaw and Tom Allen with Old Dominion University. Our project has benefited from advisory partners who have already been doing quite a bit of work in the marine debris arena in Virginia. So a huge shout out to our partners with the Clean Virginia Waterways program at Longwood University, the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program at the Department of Environmental Quality, and the Elizabeth River Project, an environmental nonprofit located here in Norfolk, Virginia. Next. So to provide a quick overview, this project is designed to support implementation of the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan by establishing a coalition that brings together the concerns, interests, resources, and capacities of existing and new stakeholders from across multiple sectors. So drawing from state and local government, nonprofits, businesses, the education sector, and even at the community level. So through this coalition approach, we're looking at developing a whole of community stakeholder network that will undertake coordinated activities to achieve two important goals of the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan, which is the first one is to understand, prevent, and mitigate the impacts of derelict fishing gear, and then to prevent and mitigate the contributions of abandoned and derelict vessels. So those are the two kind of key thrust areas for implementation of the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan for our project. Next slide, please. So the 2021-2025 Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan was developed with extensive participation by stakeholders. And so when we step back and think, then the successful implementation of this plan should similarly require sustained collaboration and coordination through this whole of community approach. This whole of community framework for implementing the plan and addressing marine debris then calls for action and engagement by not only the stakeholders that were involved in the development of the plan, but also with stakeholders that are new to the issue of marine debris. And so we're really starting to think about it from not just those who are already very strongly and actively engaged with the issue, but those who are starting at the learning phase of being part of that collaboration or the coalition. More importantly, however, we recognize that on-the-ground implementation must recognize and respond to the needs, concerns, interests, resources, capacity of the community within which implementation has to take place, and also recognizing the communities that are impacted by marine debris. And this really points to the importance of the local scale as a starting point for establishing a coalition that can potentially then extend across the coastal region of our state. Next, please. So our project's approach to building this local network for addressing marine debris begins with the communities of Portsmouth and Norfolk, Virginia, that are located in the Hampton Roads region of Virginia. Both Norfolk and Portsmouth are home to minority communities that have been historically excluded from planning and policy making, but are also underserved in general when it comes to policy implementation. So beginning with Norfolk and Portsmouth as our target communities for coalition building allows our project team to engage with communities and with groups that are less civically involved, disadvantaged, or are underserved. Working with these stakeholders from across the whole of community in Norfolk and in Portsmouth, our project activities focus on building this local network that fits within and that connects to a statewide marine debris network. So our work doesn't happen in isolation, but it rather is connected to other efforts that are happening across the state in terms of DFG and ADV removal. Next slide. So the project's approach to coalition building to support the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan implementation involves creating a network of stakeholders and partners that begins with those involved with the plan's development, but then expands the diversity and the number of stakeholders, and more importantly, coordinates these different stakeholder activities to ensure robust relationships and strong connections across different stakeholder organizations and different types of activities related to mitigation, removal, and prevention. So in doing so, our goal is to create this coalition of those, first of all, who are informed about the problem of marine debris that might previously not had this particularly on their radar, but then those who are more willing to support activities and goals of the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan because they're more informed and because they're more engaged, and ultimately those who are committed to doing and who are actively participating in marine debris removal, mitigation, and prevention efforts. So to create these three groups of stakeholders, our project will start with educational activities to increase literacy on marine debris issues. Second, we will directly engage people through activities such as crowdsourcing of data, cleanup events, recycling events to increase their willingness to support and their intention to act, right? So we're transitioning from just knowing about the issue to then having that direct engagement that increases their stake and increases their intention to do something. And third, to move towards stakeholders who are committed to taking specific action, we will be undertaking a community-based social marketing campaign to encourage more active participation in marine debris and ADV and DFG activities specifically. Next slide. So we're talking about this still in kind of very much kind of a theoretical basis. We're a little bit behind the curve. We've not quite yet embarked. We're still in our coordination with a lot of other activities at the state level. But our project has 4 objectives. And the first is that when we think about wanting to build this coalition of the informed, the willing, the committed to doing, we want to create a more robust and diverse network of stakeholders to implement ADV and DFG mitigation, removal, and prevention efforts in support of the plan. And in doing so, we have to also increase literacy about and engagement with marine debris issues among this wide range of stakeholders. And to do so, one of the tools will be the creation of an online hub to provide up-to-date information, data, resources, but also to facilitate public outreach campaigns and events. And then thinking, for example, about expanding and maintaining an ADV inventory and distributing educational and other materials. Finally, marine debris is a big problem in Virginia, like a lot of other coastal states and the Great Lakes, but we don't yet have marine debris as part of the Virginia Sea Grant Extension portfolio. So we're hoping that with this project, we'll also then enhance the staffing capacity for Virginia Sea Grant to expand its outreach to include marine debris as a specific engagement topic. Next slide, please. So related to achieving those 4 objectives, we have 5 project components. The first is to hire a project coordinator to really think about how we can undertake this coordinated approach to marine debris activities. The project coordinator will also create and manage the online hub and then create and deliver public education and outreach programs to build upon the existing Virginia Sea Grant outreach programs and more explicitly incorporate marine debris talking points and presentations. Then the second project component will be to support and sustain the coalition through the online community hub that I had talked about that really intends to facilitate stakeholder engagement in a coordinated way. The third project component is to increase community participation in the process of ADV identification and reporting, the prioritization of which vessels to remove, activities related to recycling and reuse options for a variety of different levels of ADV activities, and then thinking about creating informational and educational materials, including topics like environmental and public safety impacts. On the DFG side, our goal, this component will deliver targeted activities for active removal, mitigation, and prevention of DFG, such as having the project coordinator who will develop new outreach products on proper disposal and recycling of fishing lines, increasing opportunities for recycling and reuse, and encouraging responsible recreational crabbing. The fifth component, when we really think about talking about the coalition of the informed, is the willing is to start with youth education. And we think of the youth as a group that are generally excluded from decision making and participation in implementation of plans and policies. But through targeted engagement for youth in K through 12 and in higher education institutions, we hope that the project will then increase the diversity of the local stakeholder network for marine debris, but also have a longer term sustained impact. Next slide, Maddie. So I stayed true to my 10 minutes, so I think we're back on track, but here's my contact information, and I would love if anybody has ideas or thoughts. If you want to reach out, please, my email address is right here.
Thank you, Lee. That was so wonderful to hear about. Such a multifaceted project you've got going on. If anyone has questions for her, please feel free to ask them. In the meantime, I would love to know, what is one challenge that you're sort of foreseeing as you get this project going?
So so like I said, we're kind of behind the curve. Our biggest challenge, I think, at this point is going to be hiring our project coordinator. We've had some challenges just in a variety of different ways in hiring for staffing in general. So I foresee that to be a challenge. But the other challenge is, it's a good challenge, but we have a lot of other activities related to DFG and ADV in the region that have also recently been funded. And so trying to make sure that what we do stays coordinated and connected to all the other things that are going on, to make sure that we're not duplicating, but we're also then connecting our stakeholders from, to learn about it, to be part and supporting, and then to actually be involved in DFG removal, recycling, thinking about ADV prioritization activities. So with so many balls in the air, sometimes I think I worry that that's going to be something that just we're not able to stay on top of everything and all of these issues staying coordinated.
Right, that makes sense. Multifaceted, but super challenging to do that. Oh, well, thank you. That was so great. We can move right along to our final talk of the day, which is Massachusetts Marine Debris from Source to Stellwagen, a comprehensive suite of tools for environmental educators. Go ahead.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Maddie. And thank you everybody for hanging in there and listening to the very last presentation of the day, I believe. We're really excited to get to talk about the work that we've been doing. So my name is Christy Burkholder. I am a physical oceanographer by training and also a professor of environmental science at Stonehill College, which is a small school outside of Boston. And it's my pleasure to sort of be the spokesperson for the work that's been done by a really strong team of collaborators that are, I know, listening in the audience today. Jack Buckley, who is at the Cohasset Center for Student Coastal Research, as well as our collaborators at MIT Sea Grant, Drew Bennett and Ben Bray. And so the work that I'm going to be talking about today is a huge team effort led by all four of us. And so, as Maddie said, the title of our talk today is Massachusetts Marine Debris from Source to Stellwagen, a comprehensive suite of tools for environmental educators. And I know that that is a somewhat long and wordy title, but we really feel that it highlights the bulk of the work that we are trying to do. We are trying to build tools that can be used in K-12 classrooms to help teachers talk to students about marine debris in a really comprehensive way. And so ultimately, our goal is for students to recognize that whether they live near or far from the coast, the things that are happening in their neighborhoods can actually impact marine environments down the line. And so we have been thinking through ways to sort of drive that message home for the students. Next slide, please, Maddie. Excellent. And so what you can see on your screen is a pillar. It doesn't look like the letters have shown up in this particular version of the slide, but the pillars are meant to show that we have chunked our project into 3 separate sections. So the first section is that we are working, or we have built tools that we're going to be using in the classroom. The second pillar is supposed to say implement the tools, which is how we think about bringing those tools into K-12 classrooms to be used by the teachers. And then the third pillar will say continuing the work. And so that is how we think about the students that will have been participating in a marine debris curriculum over the course of their time with us. What happens when they leave, at the end of the year? How do we get them to continue on caring about marine debris? And so, Maddie, if you could skip ahead and one more. So I'm going to start with discussing the first pillar, which is building the tools that we think will be really helpful in terms of having teachers have tools that will help them talk to their students about marine debris. And so I want to highlight 2 tools in particular that we're working to develop. The first of which you can see on your screen right now, which is a new surface drifter. And so we are very fortunate in the Gulf of Maine region to have had a long history of surface drifters being launched throughout the Gulf of Maine. We have a long existing relationship with a program called the Student Drifter Program, which was originated in the early 2000s by the combined efforts of Jim Manning from NOAA Fisheries and Aaron Peltier from the Gulf of Maine Lobster Foundation. And the Student Drifter Program was really designed to partner with K-12 students who would build a surface drifter in their classroom and then partner with the commercial fishing community who would bring those drifters that the students have created in their classrooms and launch them offshore. And so the drifters were long used as ways to model all sorts of different things in the ocean, but they have been historically used to track marine debris and to help us imagine how marine debris might be moving throughout the Gulf. And so when we started envisioning this grant, we were really excited about the possibility to help the SDP move into a new chapter where we can improve on the existing designs and develop a new surface drifters along with our colleagues at MIT Sea Grant. And so the work that you're seeing on the screen is largely driven by Drew Bennett, who is one of our MIT Sea Grant colleagues. And Drew is really working on updating the surface drifters that have been used historically to take them into a more positive direction. So some of the efforts that Drew is leading right now are developing a new drifter that meets a set of criteria, including that the surface drifter will be able to be constructed by K-12 students. It should have a battery life of at least 6 months so that once it gets launched in the ocean, we can track it and get a really great set of data from it. Importantly, he's working to develop the drifter from biodegradable materials. So historically, we only get about 50% recovery rate for the version of the drifters that we've used in the past. And so we were looking for ways to prevent adding more marine debris as we were working to study marine debris. So those biodegradable materials are something that we're really excited about. He's working to design drifters that can be easily shipped to make sure that not only coastal communities and schools, but schools located further inland can use this tool. And importantly, he's looking to lower the cost of the drifters. So he is shooting for less than $500 per drifter, but really aiming ideally to get even lower than that. He's looking ideally to be below $250. So we're really excited about the work that Drew is doing. One final note about the new drifters, they will of course have GPS tracking on them, as did the previous set of drifters. But one of the cool things that Drew is working on right now is adding additional sensors to the drifters if possible. So we're interested in having them record temperature, salinity, and wind if possible while they're moving around the ocean, in addition to tracking their location. And so as you can see in the pictures at the bottom part of this slide, the work is already well underway. So the middle picture that you can see is a soak test that's happening where Drew and his students that work with him were testing various materials to see how they hold up under different sets of conditions. So working to identify what materials would be the most appropriate for these new drifters. And on the bottom right, you can see some of the preliminary designs that he and his students are considering for the updated drifters. So next slide, Maddie, please. Okay, great. And so the second tool that is shown on your screen is also one that's being developed by our colleagues at MIT Sea Grant. In this case, this is being developed by Ben Bray. And the second tool is really working on designing an improved system for visualizing marine debris. And so Ben had previously developed a system called Sea Grant in response to requests by NGOs and researchers and communities for a better solution for storing and visualizing data and presenting that data in a mobile-friendly interface. And so Seaglass is a system that automatically links to a really wide range of data sources. So things like drifters or marine debris data or satellite data. And it imports that data into a single system that can be queried and visualized together and easily manipulated by the same user or within the same interface by the user. And so we are super excited about the power of this tool. But for the purposes of this grant or this work, I really want to highlight one potential use. And so if you can draw your attention to the figure on the lower left, you can see that there's a couple of different data sources that are included within the image that you can see on the slide. So there's some gray dots along the coastline, and then there's the colorful squiggles offshore. And so the gray dots actually represent data that was sort of imported into Seaglass by Ben that comes from the NOAA Marine Debris Tracker app. So a teacher could use the NOAA Marine Debris Tracker app with their students wherever their school is. They could record what debris they're finding locally, and then they could upload it into the Seaglass system where they can visualize it alongside of surface drifters that have been floating in the Gulf of Maine in their area historically throughout time. And one of the coolest things that Ben is currently working on implementing within the Seaglass system right now is that he's updating the system to be able to model flow of debris or theoretical flow of debris from wherever the teachers are out to the ocean. So he's looking to be able to model based on where streams and brooks are, but also, and this links back to Christy's presentation a few minutes ago, potentially including flow of storm water and things like that. So we're really looking to use this tool to help the teachers say, here's the source of the debris up where we are, and we're going to use this tool to help visualize how that debris ends up in the ocean. And then because we are using the drifters as well, where does it go once it's in the ocean as well? So we're super excited about the potential for this tool in the classroom. Okay, so next slide, Maddie. Okay, and we'll skip right over that slide again, but that slide is meant to say, okay, now we're moving into thinking about how we're implementing these tools within the classroom. So when we think about, the fact that we have developed or are developing these really powerful tools, the next step is figuring out how to make sure that the teachers can use them in their classrooms. And so we thought the best way to approach trying to get teachers to use these tools was to partner with the teachers to ask them, how can these be incorporated into your classroom curriculum in the most effective way? And so as part of the grant, we wrote in stipends for teachers to partner with us over the course of the year to give us feedback about both the tools and about how they could potentially incorporate that into their classrooms. And so over the course of this academic year, we are running 3 teacher training workshops to be held at Stonehill College. Our first teacher training workshop was in September. You can see some of our teacher training cohort in the lower left picture on the screen. We have another one coming up in December and another one in March. And in each of these teacher training workshops, we're teaching the teachers how to use one of the tools that we described previously. And then our ask of the teachers is that they give us information about how they could use that tool in their classroom. So what we have pitched to the teachers is that they help a teacher out. And so they can give us any materials that can then be shared broadly that would help a future teacher incorporate the tools into their own curriculum. So it could be that they put together a how-to video that they're willing to share outward about how to use a particular tool. It could be that they design an assignment using the tool that they're willing to share with the community at large. Or it could even be that they are willing to share teaching notes that list state standards that a lesson might hit if they incorporate these these tools. And so we're really excited about the feedback that we're getting from the teachers throughout the process, but also excited about the curricular materials that they're supplying us with at the end of this year. And then if you're paying close attention to the words on the slide, you might also recognize that in May, we are planning on having the teachers bring their students that have been participating in this curriculum all year to Stonehill to have our own version of a marine debris summit where the students can talk to us about some of the work they've been doing in their classrooms. Okay, next slide. And so we're very excited that we've been able to get a wide range of teachers to be included in our pilot cohort. So our youngest our youngest students that we're working with are 3rd graders. Christina Diaz is a 3rd grade teacher, so she's there thinking about how elementary school classes could incorporate some of these topics. And the range goes all the way up through AP Environmental and AP Computer Science classes that are running at obviously the advanced high school level. So we're super excited about the opportunity to bring this curriculum in at multiple levels. Okay, next slide. And we'll skip one more because that final pillar was talking about how we are going to continue the work once our students end up getting all the way through their curriculum with us. And the school year has now ended, so we want to say what happens next. And so we as a team, we're looking for ways for an interested student to be able to continue their exploration of these types of issues. And so one of the ways that we thought that they might be able to do that was through an internship support program. And so throughout the course of the year, we're working with our nonprofit partners in the Boston area. We are identifying potential internships that high school students, for example, might be able to take advantage of. But one of the things that we were very intentional about when we set up our pilot cohort of teachers was that we were working to partner with school districts that are from environmental justice communities. And we know that sometimes the students that are within those districts have barriers that prevent them from being able to take advantage of high school internships. Those barriers could be things like they can't afford to take an unpaid environmental internship, or they might be located far from a field site where the work would be happening, or they lack the gear that they would need to be able to be successful in the internship. And so we're very fortunate that the grant funded a pot of money that we can use flexibly to be able to provide support for those students, no matter what the barrier is that they're facing. So we're really looking to meet the students where they are, particularly from these communities that have not been well included up to this point. And this is something that we're going to be working to develop over the course of this year. So the bottom of the slide there says stay tuned, because we're really excited to see how this work develops over the course of the year. Okay, next slide, Maddie. And so with that, I think I will just leave this slide up, which says thanks to our funders and our project partners. And I would be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kristen. That was so interesting and fun. I really liked it.
Thanks.
So I know you have a lot of collaborators on this project, but what has been your favorite part of this project?
Ooh, so all four of us that are on this project team might answer this differently, but I think my favorite moment so far is you've seen some pictures of the pilot cohort of teachers that have come to Stonehill, and we did our first teacher training workshop. And so the materials that we have been asking for from our teacher cohort have started coming in. And so it has been really fun to get to envision the many ways in which our teachers are using these tools within the classroom already. I am so impressed by their creativity and the ways in which they are engaging their students around these issues. So that has been really, really fun. And for me personally as well, like getting to work with the guys at MIT Sea Grant and see the very cool things that they are doing up there, developing these new drifters and developing this amazing resource that I'm excited to use as a researcher. That's been a lot of fun too. So I would say those are my personal two favorites so far.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That concludes day 3 of the Sea Grant Marine Debris Symposium. Thank you again, Kristen, for that great final talk. And we will see everybody back here tomorrow at 2 p.m. for the last day of the symposium. So thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a great night.